I know you did wrestling, did some lifting competitions.
Yeah, I was first a pro strongman, then a pro wrestler, and then a pro bodybuilder. Obviously, I've had multiple businesses along the way. I created and sold my first business in my mid-20s. I went to college. I have a major in theology, a minor in philosophy, but I had zero intention of getting a job when I was done. I knew that I wanted to do things my way. I knew I wanted to pursue my weightlifting. Didn't really know how I was going to monetize it, but that's a whole different story. I love to coach. I love to help people recognize and attain their potential. Not many Americans can say this, but I've actually been to North Korea, not South, North. We had a wrestling show that was called Wrestling for Peace. They had no idea what wrestling was because they're locked off from the rest of the world. We got to the ring and we had to acknowledge all the powers that were in these humongous chairs. North Korean, some sort of politicians or whatever you want to call them. I think what is really most important to talk about with my story is that you see all this stuff that I've done. I've been to a pro level, internationally recognized in 3 different sports. I've been an entrepreneur from jump, many successful businesses, owned a gym, clothing line. My story is very different than most. They spend 40 years doing something that may or may not interest them with the idea that they're creating a plan to retire, to get away from what they've been doing for the last 40 years. I wanted nothing to do with that. My story. Thank God I had the challenges that I had. I was really difficult time learning, and my brothers were smart, like smart. I don't know, something got malaligned with me when it came to some of the basic stuff. But again, now that we're older, my brothers will also say, I envy you for your ability to do this, that, and the other. My oldest brother actually sent his boy to stay with me for a bit over the summer because he just wanted to expose him to the type of behavior patterns that I had developed. Again, self-diagnosis of OCD, that doing things over and over is extraordinarily comfortable to me. And sometimes it can get a hold of me. So basically freshman football, where I went to high school, football was big. So there was a varsity team of 50, a JV team of 50, and there was 2 freshman teams. Yeah, I basically went to the coach's office pretending I needed a towel, thinking that I would get some sort of understanding there, right? Open up the coach's door. There I am. And of course, I don't blame the coach. They're not used to seeing what they saw when I opened the door. Walking down the hall was a different experience, I'll be honest. It wasn't uncommon for someone to spit in my face, this kind of stuff. Thank God. Because all this stuff, number one, I was told I couldn't from the beginning. So when someone tells me I can't as an adult, I've heard this my whole life. When I went from pro strongman to pro wrestling, I was 34 years old. You can't do that. I'm going to try. Oh yeah, I could have very easily said I have all these problems. And that's why I never did anything that my heart wanted me to do. And unfortunately, too many people listen to the people that tell them that they can't. Even if I literally took a crack at something and it didn't work out and I fell forward, I'm going to get up a few steps beyond where I fell. It may not turn out exactly like you want, but when you're chasing down things that are big and people are telling you can't, look at all the stuff that whooped your ass. Look at all the stuff that challenged you. Look at all the stuff that you thought was so terrible at the time that didn't kill you. So what's going to happen is you start to adapt this mindset. You're not going to see problems. You're going to see obstacles that you can overcome with time and consistency.
They didn't have one because it's like, if I have a plan B, then I'm not going to go after plan A. I love that. Well, I didn't really have a plan B because all my attention and focus was on that. To me, the plan B limits you from the audacious goal, which is why I encourage everybody to have an audacious goal. Yeah, it's like when I got on this journey to create this ultimate morning show, I love that you talked about there was no plan B. It's all in on plan A.
What was the catalyst to get that pudgy kid that was getting bullied, that was humiliated? What was the shift to, oh no, I got to turn into a savage now?
That's a great question. If you're going to play football or contact sports, you had to lift weights for PE class. And so with that consistency and a little direction, because obviously we had programs to work through, I started to make some success in lifting weights. I knew I was getting better, and I knew that I was making progress, which I really enjoyed. I was a junior at the time, and I was one of 2 kids that squatted 405. All of a sudden I realized, like, whoa, this is pretty cool. When you're in high school, if you're one of 2 people that did something, your status changes real quick. I started getting a lot of respect from my peers. And I realized pretty quick, damn, I think I'm better at lifting these weights than I had the sports I'm lifting the weights for. I had realized that I was good at something. And as soon as I realized I was good at something, it was like I saw Conan the Barbarian. I just knew that thing in my chest did this, and I was in pursuit. I've been looking for the answers to be a big, strong guy in the bottom of the cookie jar, the ice cream containers. I've been looking at all the wrong places, and I'm not making much progress. So then when I finally had that success with weightlifting, it was like everything connected, and all of a sudden, that's when I started to enter into that mode of, holy shit, I can do what other people can't. and I started developing my work ethic, and then it became predatory. I could just go into this mental place and I was going to beat you up. And I got to the point like I'm senior in college, I'm 260 now. I'm strong. I'm just traveling to different gyms and I'm just stacking up weights, looking for some little challenge. At that point, I was the strongest guy in the gym. So I signed up for my first Strongman contest, my pro card, went to pro nationals, placed high enough to get on the international travel team.
Sometimes you only have to be right one time.
Yeah. But I think when I went so in elementary school, they identified I was slow. I remember telling my mom, I'm going into middle school. And I'm like, listen, go to the principal, go to whoever, just get me out of those classes. I will find a way to make it in the normal classes. So she went to the school, got me in the normal classes. Let me tell you, right then and there, I realized, man, I'm gonna have to work twice, maybe 3 times as hard to keep my head above water. I developed this work ethic where I had to do 2-3 times more just to be par. I basically applied that to other parts of my life. I had to show up every day with everything I was supposed to do. Think of your story almost like a ship leaves the harbor and it knows it's going to the next harbor. If it doesn't know where that location is, it just wanders around and never gets anywhere.
What inspires me about your story, John, is you owned it.
Yeah.
Marty, we hear too many times where people don't want to take responsibilities for their own story or find excuses to not own their story. You learned early on in your life that you had to own your story or you probably weren't going to achieve what you wanted to achieve.
I was ready to make the sacrifice. I'm not like everyone else. Your story is like a roadmap to get you where you want to go. If you're listening to this right now, you've got a 1% survival rate.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. You're not going to die.
The meeting you're going into right now is going to be really difficult. You might be struggling with something going on in your head mentally or physically, but the reality is you're not going to die right now.
I think like we talk about failure, pursuing failure. If you can pursue failure, you can pursue discomfort. But what it comes down to, it's just a simple position of recognize that, hey, I'm not going to die. The other side of that sacrifice is a slightly better version of me because when I get better, I get to have more of what I want.
Let's get into the dark periods of life. And I want you to share with me, Marty, how you got out of those dark periods.
Ultimately, here's the solution. We make mistakes. How long have I been waking up scared? As soon as social pressure hit it, and all of a sudden went from everybody has a good time playing on the play yard to kids being who they are and start, oh, you're different, this, that, and the other. I was always afraid of, God, is the teacher going to call me to read out loud? I was the guy that, if we were going around reading paragraphs, I was counting so I could figure out which paragraph I had to read so I could practice before it got to me. That was me. Call it fear, call it scared, call it what you want. But I used to wake up in this state of mind because the day was filled with a lot of stuff that was really uncomfortable for me. And all I wanted to do was be like everyone else. Thank God it was. As an adult, 52 years old, I still have a methodology I use to clear this stuff. So alarm that goes off to wake me up. 1 minute later, another alarm goes off that tells me, hey, get your shit straight. Run all this stuff out of your mind because you know that whatever happens, you're going to be okay because you can bet on you because you know that you'll stand up one more time than you fall down. If you wake up in a tough state like I do, have an immediate reminder to trigger your brain to go the other way. What happens is after a few months of this, you don't need that second alarm anymore. Boom, I clear the mechanism, I realize what's going on, and bam, off I go. Goodness, the dark places, oh man, as a kid, they were all the time. And funny enough, I didn't even realize that I had developed a position of just being okay, so to speak, in that scared state, in that darkness, because it was there so much, I was just gonna learn to exist here because it was so difficult for me to build myself up into some position of feeling great and happy, and then boom, have it all taken away. So I spent a good chunk of my life in those early years living in kind of a dark space.
What, John, you're saying is when you get up in the morning, you create this awareness through the alarm to pat yourself on the back, to remind yourself that all the speculation swirling in your head, just that, speculation. Because I'll tell you both, I wake up some days with the same anxiety and I chase it. I'm like, oh my God. And I gotta slow it down.
Here's another really powerful tool. Once that second alarm goes off, I'm gonna go straight to my desk. I'm gonna write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. Can't be stressed out and grateful at the same time. Then I write, which is basically my purpose. How am I going to behave today to execute the day in a way I'm going to be happy with? So when I go to bed, I lay my head down and say, damn it, you got the job done.
Well, John, your stress can't compete with your gratitude. So when you force yourself to be grateful, you're going to remove the stress from your head.
It's the way the brain works.
How did you remove the negative people?
Think of your world. It's almost like your brain is a garden and you've got flowers and you got weeds.
Yes.
So you have to identify what are the flowers in your garden? And give attention to those flowers. Yeah.
So that meeting you're getting ready for, or that meeting you're sitting down with your family later, or there's something you're considering that's stressing you out right now, it's more than likely not going to be as bad as the story in your head telling you right now. I'm telling you because I've been there. As comfortable as you are, share that journey with myself and Marty and our audience where somebody said, hey, John, I think you should take this to help you with your pain. It was helping you. But then the hours and the days and the weeks later, you're like, oh my God, this is now killing me.
I was always going back, Pete, sooner than I was supposed to. So I was using the med to get through. And I start to realize, man, this med actually, to a certain extent, there's a performance enhancer because when you don't feel the pain, it's much easier to push. Now I'm taking this pill to feel normal. If I don't take this pill, I feel terrible. See, the addiction has got you at that point because that little voice is going to convince you it's okay. The way it works with the brain is that when you're addicted, just the thought of taking that pill is boom, your brain releases, it wrecks people's lives, it wrecks relationships. She saw the struggles I was going through and knew that I'd been using these pills after a surgery and I was having a hard time kick up. So I wasn't just letting myself down, I was letting her down. And that changed it for me.
John, I knew that we were going to get into kind of the topics of the pills and so forth, but I didn't know we were going to end up here. You come on stage here today and you share your story. You have 3 beautiful girls, you're a grandfather, you have a mother. They've all heard your story, yet many of us are so scared to share who we really are.
100%. And I think when it comes down to it, when you own what's going on and you're honest about what's happened to you, I know that I'm going to stand up one more time that I fall down. So what I'm getting at is that when you recognize that you have the power to continue to move forward, you also have the power to shed all the layers and be vulnerable because you know you're going to stand up one more time.